Prejudice against the Christian faith is growing in our nation and in the West as a whole. And this can make engaging conversations difficult. I think the situation is made particularly difficult by the growing dishonesty of so much of the public conversation too. We live in a soundbite age, and a comment unwisely made today can be quoted out of context tomorrow. And this isn't rare. If a person then continues to disagree with a stated view that we're all supposed to have, they might then be accused of intolerance, which achieves nothing more than stopping an intelligent conversation. And a person's reputation can be affected by a misused quotable quote too, because this person is now a racist or sexist, prejudiced or biased, even though none of those things might be true. And this is why we need to take a look again at Jesus, because in his day a quotable quote on some topics was a dangerous thing too. When teaching in the temple courts one day, the religious leaders came and said to him, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority?" Now Jesus knew the answer to the question, but he also understood that they couldn't accept his answer, and in fact would use it against him. So he avoided the quotable quote and replied a question with a question. "I'll ask you a question too," he said. "If you answer my question, I'll answer yours. Tell me, John's baptism, where did it come from, heaven or human origin?" And they realized his question was pretty clever, because if they said from heaven, he'd ask why they didn't believe John the Baptist. While if they said from human origin, they were afraid of the people who believed John was a prophet. So they said, "We don't know." To which Jesus said, "Well, I won't answer your question then." And he ended the conversation there. Now consider, what's the point of the story being recorded in the scriptures? It has to be because it shows us the wisdom Jesus had refusing to give quotable quotes in a hostile situation. And it's only because of this that Jesus' ministry lasted the intended 3.5 years, because it could have ended or been interrupted a lot sooner. And this is the lesson we're supposed to learn. When we're in a hostile environment, we're not supposed to be silent, but we are supposed to be wise. Let's look at another example. In John 8, a Jewish woman was brought to Jesus who'd been caught in the act of adultery. The religious leaders said, "Moses commanded us that such a woman must be stoned. Now what do you say?" And it was a trap. They were looking for a quotable quote, because if on the one hand Jesus had denied the law, his reputation as a Jewish teacher would be over. While on the other hand, the Jews didn't have authority to give the death sentence. So if he said stone her, that would be against Roman law. So the cameras are rolling, and it's the evening news, and it's on TV, and it's live. "Tell us, Jesus, what's your answer? How will you respond?" And he refused to answer. It was awkward. He probably looked like a fool. Jesus squatted down and drew on the ground, but they wouldn't let the matter go. In fact, the Bible says it's only because they kept pressing him for an answer, like with the microphone in front of him, waiting for that quotable quote, that Jesus stood up and, with the wisdom only God's Spirit can give, said, "How about whoever's without sin casts the first stone?" And if you know the rest of the story, one by one they left. So here's a question. Do you think we could say Jesus was always open and honest? The answer has to be no. Jesus was always honest, but open? Well, that depended on who he was talking with. Jesus engaged with the interested, but he only intrigued the disinterested. And if someone didn't have capacity to understand something he might say or had a hostile motive, he understood it was sometimes best to say nothing or to deflect their question. And this is the very reason he instructed us to be as wise as serpents, yet as harmless as doves. You see, it is possible to engage people around us in conversation and about all sorts of things. And it's important that we do this too, because all it takes for evil to prosper is for good people to stay silent. But if we don't learn how to deflect people with unhelpful motives, well, we might become intimidated by our society into silence. So let's learn from Jesus' example, because it is possible to make a positive difference, and even inside a hostile environment.